Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of DABCC Live. I'm excited about today. We have what I call the future, the big data, machine learning, the power of analytics, and all this great new technology applied to what we live in today, the virtualization cloud VMware world. So we have an amazing solution, amazing company with us called SIOS, and they make a great product called SIOS IQ. And we have a gentleman, one of their main technical guys, with us today to show this to you and demo it to you. Like I said in the a little bit earlier, this is a audience participation project, so please feel free to ask as many questions as possible whenever you want, and I'll make sure Tony gets you answers. So on that note, Tony, will you tell us just real quickly, just give us, introduce yourself, and then let's get going. Sound good?
Sounds great. Thanks, Doug. Hello, everyone. So as Doug mentioned, my name is Tony Tomarchio, and I'm the Director of Field Engineering for SIOS. Been with the company now about 5 years, just a little over 5 years. And prior to that, I spent time at Oracle, at Sun, and at various Linux startups. So been in the systems management and high availability space for well over a decade here. And today, I'm going to be talking about a new solution from SIOS. It's a product called SIOS IQ. SIOS IQ is a machine learning-based analytics platform, and what it does is it learns the behavior of your infrastructure, and it learns the behaviors and the patterns. And at the end of the day, what it's able to do is it can provide you with answers to difficult problems that you might be seeing within a complex VMware environment, performance root cause related, host-based caching related. We'll go through various use cases that the product can be applied to here today. And in today's session, I'm going to provide you with, first of all, an overview of the product. Then I'm going to jump into a live demo and show you how the product works. So again, if any questions come up, please ask as we go along. But before I jump into all the content here, I want to give you a brief background on SIOS as a company. So SIOS used to be called STELI Technologies. We've been around since 1999. Initially, we started by providing high availability and data replication solutions for both Windows and Linux environments, and we've expanded upon that. We've got into this this new machine learning analytics space. We've got extensive machine learning expertise within the company as well. So we've been applying that knowledge in this new area to provide and to bring an exciting new solution to market that's going to help answer a lot of tough questions that you'll be experiencing as you manage a VMware environment day in and day out. So again, the product that we're talking about here is called SIOS IQ. It's an IT operations analytics platform specifically for virtual environments here today. And I've got a handful of slides. Let's jump right into this, and we'll get to a live demonstration here shortly. So, as I mentioned before, so SIOS IQ, what it does, it pulls and it consolidates data from existing data sources. So it's looking at your virtual centers. It's looking at your ESX host. It's even looking up into the application stack. And it's continuously analyzing hundreds of thousands of data points in real time across compute, network, storage, and again, even up into the application layer. And all that time we're collecting all this data, and the machine learning analytics that the technology provides is it automatically learns the behavioral patterns. It figures out what normal behavior is. It also identifies, anomalies, and it'll figure out problems in real time as it learns. So the power, with this type of a solution compared to, other ways of doing this historically is, you don't have to set any baselines yourself. You don't have to set thresholds. You don't have to manually configure baselines and know, how these should be set. It's going to figure this out all automatically. The product is going to learn as it goes. And, it takes all of that raw data that we're collecting, and it, provides an analysis so that you can take action. So it provides actionable insights and intelligence on how you can actually resolve the issue. You might be having a performance issue with one of your, let's say, SQL servers within a virtual machine, and you have no idea where the problem might be. Is it a problem with the storage? Is it a problem with the network? Is it a problem with the host? Is it a problem with SQL Server? And this, with a single click of the mouse, as we'll see some examples here in the demo, with a single click, it will tell you who the root cause of the problem is, what other objects in the environment are impacted, what are the symptoms, things like that. So we'll get into that in some detail as we go further here. So moving on to the next slide. With any virtual environment, it certainly can be difficult to get to the bottom of an issue. I mean, just because of the sheer size and complexity, you're talking many virtual machines, you've got many hosts, you've got data stores, you've got applications, and each object is generating vast amounts of data that you need to analyze and understand in order to figure out what's going on. But if you take a look at the right, we've got a diagram. This is just a small VMware deployment of just one virtual center and a handful of hosts. And you can see how complex this graph and these relationships can potentially get. So when you're trying to understand the root cause of an issue, it's important to look and understand as a bigger picture here. You can't just look at an individual metric on an individual object, but you really need to take into account all of these objects as a whole, and also the complex relationships between one another. I mean, you could have one VM over here that's negatively impacting another VM on a different host running a different application. So and to make things even more complex, these VMware environments are dynamic. You've got virtual machines being added, removed, vMotion between hosts, on a regular basis here. So keeping track of what's happening and where, and what the root cause of an issue here can get quite challenging, if not impossible to figure out. If we take a moment and really look at the title of this slide, too much data, not enough insight. I mean, it's really built upon that previous slide. There's no question there's lots of data out there that you can analyze, but the problem is that there's oftentimes too much data. And where do you look? What information is meaningful? What should you ignore? The key information is easily overlooked when you're looking at data sets that are that large. And traditional tools are generally looking at issues, at the individual object layer. Say a certain static threshold being crossed. Without correlating that to how it impacts other objects in the environment. So, and it's traditionally been up to the administrator to figure that out. So, for an example, let's say you've got an application that's performing poorly. The old-fashioned way of doing this is, IT would generally bring together folks from, multiple siloed teams in order to figure out the root cause of a problem and resolve it. You bring somebody in from the storage team, from the networking team, from the VMware admin team, from the DBA team, and all these different tools that these different folks have typically focus on a specific silo. Maybe application monitoring versus storage monitoring, et cetera. And again, all the data is there, but correlating the data between the different layers in the stack and the different technologies, and fully understanding not only what the data is, but its meaning, can be challenging and time-consuming. Oftentimes there's a lot of finger pointing. The DBA is pointing at the SAN administrator and vice versa, and things like that. So at the end of the day, this just it's challenging and time-consuming. Many different parties are involved in debugging, issues that arise in these virtual environments. And at the end of the day, this just leads to cost. So, many cases, the actual problem is typically, a combination of multiple root causes. And that's beyond the capabilities of today's tools here. So again, it's too much data, too many places. It's really hard to interpret the results and get at the real answers here. So, tools out there are falling short of true, deep root cause analysis here. So moving on to the next slide. So again, it all comes back to too much noise. So, this is just a kind of a graphical representation of different data points that we've collected across application, host, storage, networking, and if you just look at this chart, it just looks like noise. What does it mean? What are the patterns? How do I understand that? And so on. So what we do with SIOS IQ is we take all of that raw data and we run it through our machine learning engine, and that noise, so to speak, we transform that through a process that we call topological behavior analysis. And that's where the technology is taking into account both the shape and the meaning of the data, and it couples that with the topology, so the relationships between these objects. And by doing so, it allows us to derive patterns, again, not just of an individual object, but patterns as, groups as the environment as a whole. So we can detect patterns that take place across multiple VMs, across multiple data stores, and look at that, as the bigger picture here. So this allows us to derive patterns, to understand anomalies, and then once we understand what normal behavior is versus an anomaly, we can make recommendations as a whole, taking into account all these different objects again, but not just at a point in time, but over time. So we're looking at this data continuously, and that at the end of the day provides you with faster, more accurate solutions to a problem that might arise in your environment. So, the outcome of all of this, complex analysis under the covers, I mean, we're really talking big data analytics here underneath the covers. So, the outcome of all of this is simplicity. And you're going to see in the demonstration that it almost just looks too easy. You click a button and it tells you everything pretty much on a single screen, who the root cause is, what the type of issue is. But there's, a vast amount of intelligence and processing that's taking place under the covers to really accurately get to the bottom of all this. So simplicity, right? So we talk about, one touch to clarity. So I'll show you how with, a click of a button, single click, that you can understand fully what the issue is and what can be done to resolve it. I do want to mention, though, that the interface is very intuitive, as I'm sure you'll see that in the demo here. It's touch-enabled. So we've designed it kind of a mobile-first methodology here, so you can access this via a web browser. You could pull this up on a tablet like an iPad or a Surface, and really access SIOS IQ from pretty much any type of a device. So it makes it really easy to stay on top of the issues and to understand what's going on in your environment. And the approach that we've taken with this machine learning backend is it's fundamentally different from what most tools are doing today. We're focused on knowledge discovery rather than just simply data or metrics reporting. We're looking at, again, the complex relationships of all these components over time. So rather than simply reporting on point-in-time status or averages, and when you deal with averages, that can be problematic because you lose a lot of data points when you do things like that. You lose spikes, and with things like storage latencies, that's important to understand here. So we're providing a deeper knowledge of the infrastructure that's extremely valuable in more accurately predicting, simulating, and recommending solutions to these environments. And I'll show you a couple of examples here. So as we go forward. So another key feature that I'll show you is we call this our PERC dashboard. So PERC stands for Performance, Efficiency, Reliability, and Capacity. So we're looking at compute, storage, and network metrics along these four key quality of service dimensions. And as you'll see in the demo, we've got different ways to filter this. You can look at subsets of the environment. You can look at these charts over different date ranges and so on. But this is kind of the foundation of our dashboard here. Is, we're focusing on performance, efficiency, reliability, and capacity. And I've got a couple of slides that go into some information on some of the use cases that the product covers here today, and then we'll switch gears and we'll jump into the demo. So the first and one of the primary use cases the product delivers is root cause analysis. Again, you've got an issue. You don't know where the problem lies. You've got a dynamic environment. Virtual machines are being added, deleted, moved around. Storage might be getting reconfigured, and where's the problem? Is it a storage problem? Is it a network problem? Is it a guest problem? Is it a hypervisor problem? Things like that. So what we see here is on the right side. I've got a little screenshot from the UI. We identify just right there at the top critical warning and informational issues. You can click on any of those and drill down and see more information. So here's a critical issue. We drill down. This is an example where we've got an application storage contention issue, and it tells you who the root cause is. So I'll show you the rest of the tabs live in the demonstration here. So root cause analysis is a primary use case. And again, one click to figure out who the problematic object or objects are, what are the symptoms, and who's impacted, and also a recommendation of what can be done to resolve it. Secondly is host-based caching. So one strategy for dealing with performance issues in a VMware environment is to throw some SSDs inside your ESX hosts and turn on caching to speed up, to offload the workload off the SAN and cache some of this in a local SSD. But the challenge with host-based caching is figuring out where the cache should be placed, which virtual machines would benefit from that, and then furthermore how to configure the cache. The size of the cache, what the cache block size should be. And there are some general rule of thumbs out there, like you allocate 20% of the disk space and you go with 32K block size, but that's not the right answer for every workload. That might work for some, but you're not making the most, you're not getting the most out of your SSD cache if you just go based on those general rule of thumb. So what SIOS IQ does here is we analyze the I/O patterns of your virtual machines and down to individual virtual disks, and we look at those patterns over time, and we will automatically tell you which virtual machines would be good candidates to enable caching, and we'll tell you the predicted cache hit ratio, current and predicted IOPS, current and predicted latencies, and then we'll tell you exactly how much cache is needed and the cache block size that would be required as well. So host-based caching is another very interesting use case that is provided by our machine learning backend as well here. So also VM sprawl is generally a problem in most VMware deployments. So this can analyze that over time and tell you which virtual machines are idle, and you might want to go ahead and maybe get rid of them to clean up resources in your environment. And then also snapshot waste is another use case here. I'll take you through briefly in the demo. You can have snapshots all over the place. It will tell you where these snapshots are as a single view, the age, the number of siblings, because the more nested snapshots you have, that will also have an impact on your performance, because those need to be traversed during I/O operations here. So that's just another kind of a pane of glass view where you can look at across the entire environment. Where are the idle or wasted resources, so you can potentially clean them up and save some money or save some space here. So those are some of the primary use cases that we're delivering here with SIOS IQ today. And just to recap briefly before I jump into a demo. So again, SIOS IQ is a machine learning based analytics platform. It learns the behavioral patterns of your environment, of the storage, the network, the compute, virtual machines, even the application, and it figures out what's normal behavior, what's an anomaly, and it provides answers to these difficult problems that you're facing within a VMware environment. So it's really easy to install. If you're interested in it, you can simply go up to us.sios.com, so go visit our website. And you can download a copy of SIOS IQ. It's an OVA file, it's a virtual appliance. Just drop it right in, load it into your VMware environment, point it at your virtual center servers, tell it where it is, and that's really about it. It will automatically start to analyze your virtual machines, your hosts, your data stores, all those different types of objects, and start learning those patterns. Again, it provides a one-touch performance root cause analysis. I'll show you that in just a minute. It provides host-based caching analysis features, so you can identify how much cache and what virtual machines would benefit from enabling of that. And then also provides VM resource optimization functionality as well. So at this point, let me switch gears. I'm going to bring up my web browser and take you through a demo of the product here.
Perfect. Tony, that was awesome. That was really, really awesome. I have a question for you.
Sure
You
thing.
ready? Cool.
I'm
How is
ready.
it? Yeah, well, wonderful. How is this licensed? How do you think?
Great question. So it's pretty simple. It's a subscription type license, and it's just based on it's per host, right? So if you had a VMware environment, if you had 10 ESX hosts, it's 10 licenses. We don't care about sockets or cores or anything like that. So it's really straightforward. Another thing I do want to mention is as long as you have that subscription to the product, we are releasing new updates and features to the product on a regular basis. So you keep that subscription going, you're always going to get the latest and greatest features. The product is self-updating. So I've just shared up my desktop, and at the top right of the screen, I have this wheel icon, and right now it's red, and it's telling me that, hey, you should go manage your updates. So it'll tell you that, okay, here's the version that you're running, and oh, there's an update to this available, and you can click a button, and it'll update itself. So you can always keep current with the latest and greatest, and when we release new features, you can take advantage of those, as they get released. So, so licensed as a subscription, and it's based on the number of hosts in your environment.
Perfect, perfect. And then you talked about this being a virtual appliance and what have you. And maybe you already answered this question within that statement. But I always like to ask right before we do a demo. Here are things right here. You have it all configured. What does it take to get to this point? You know what I mean? What does someone need to do to get to what we see on the screen?
Great question. Yeah, happy to go through that. So, so step one is you download the OVA file, and then you load the virtual machine into, you deploy the VM from the OVA. You go through the simple wizard, in your vSphere or your vCenter interface. It'll ask you things like, what name and IP do you want to give the virtual appliance? You answer a couple of simple questions, and it boots up the virtual machine. Then you fire up your web browser, you point it at the IP address of your SIOS IQ virtual appliance, and you log in. It'll ask you to apply a license file. And then you'll be at the PERC dashboard that I have up in front of me right now, except it will be empty until you go over here to Manage. You simply click Manage. And what you do here is you would add one or more what we call environments. And that's where you tell an environment is basically a virtual center. So you would tell SIOS IQ where your one or more vCenters are, give the appropriate credentials so it can log in and start pulling data, and that's it. So you basically, you load the OVA, you log in, you define an environment, one or more, because we can connect to multiple virtual centers, and it just starts learning from there. So that's it. At that point, for the performance root cause features, we start to learn immediately, and it will go through a learning phase for the initial 7 days. So the first 7 days, it will start learning the behaviors, and then it'll start to tell you, what the anomalies versus the normal behavior is. So it's very easy. I mean, you're talking, minutes to under an hour to get this thing set up. It's usually just a handful of minutes, and then it starts doing its thing.
Perfect, perfect. So you answered that last part or my last question at the end. So perfect, guys. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the questions piece to go to webinar and ask away. So Tony's going to get into the demo now, and if you see anything on the screen you want to know about, just ask away. Use the questions piece to go to webinar, and I will get Tony to answer them. So Tony, it's your show, man.
Okay, perfect. Thanks again. Okay, so we're looking at the PERC dashboard. Again, PERC stands for Performance, Efficiency, Reliability, Capacity. And I mentioned we've got various filters, so we can look at, if you have multiple environments, you can look at this data as a whole, or you can drill down into a subset. You can also look at these charts over the past days, 1, 7, or 30 days, if you want to look at different scopes here. At the very top, we have the PERC dashboard here, and you can see that the issue. This is the issues area. So this will tell you. Right now I've got one critical performance issue. I've got 5, warning issues, and I've got, 2 informational issues. So if you click on any of these squares here, it'll drill down. We'll do that in just a moment. But then down below, we've got the PERC matrix. So this is where you can see those 4 PERC dimensions, but we can look at it more specifically, compute, for storage, as well as for network. So things here, if we look at the storage performance section here, I can look at my average throughput. I can see my average IOPS, my latencies. I can also see how the maybe workloads are changing over time, and the number of candidates that would benefit from host-based caching can change over time. Here up above, I've got compute information about host CPU utilization, CPU ready time, memory ballooning and swapping, waste as far as idle virtual CPUs, track live migrations over time, host uptime, things like that. If what I'm going to start with is I'm going to show you how we can identify a performance root cause issue here. So again, single click. So SIOS IQ is analyzing the behavior of the environment. It's detected an anomaly. It's created an event. And I can see that right here first thing when I log in. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And it's going to take me to the performance root cause screen here. And it's highlighted an issue. The issue type, it's an application storage contention issue. The symptom is latency in this particular example, and it's happening at the storage tier. And right off the bat, I can see who the root cause is. So there are these 2 virtual machines. These 2 virtual machines are what is causing the problem. And if I drill down, I can see the symptoms. So we've got this graph here, and I can see the behavior over time. I've got highlighted in red, this is the anomaly that's been detected here. And I can even drill down and see more information and look at different data points over time. So I can see latency spiked up to 128, just over 128 milliseconds here. I can also do an impact analysis and figure out what other objects are related to this particular issue here. So again, you can look at these different issues. You can filter these. We've got a lot of different we've got critical warning and informational issues here. So again, all of that with a single click. It highlighted an issue. I clicked down and it told me who the root cause is, who's impacted, and what are the symptoms here. So now, actually, let me go back to this particular issue, and it'll also give me some recommendations. So at this point, we're not automating the fix, but we'll tell you what we recommend that you do. In this case, this particular example is a noisy neighbor situation. So these 2 virtual machines are basically noisy neighbors. You might consider moving those to a different host or a different data store so it doesn't negatively impact the other hosts on this host or data store. So that's just one example. Doing this manually and looking at all the different objects and how they relate, could be either extremely difficult, if not impossible to figure out on your own here. So that's performance root cause. If we go back to the dashboard, now for that second use case of host-based caching, I can go here and I can click on the host-based caching dashboard, or for these charts in the PERC dashboard, you can drill down, and I can either get more information or I can drill down to the particular dashboard for that chart. So let me do that. So I'm looking at this, and SIOS IQ, without me having to do anything here, is it's come back and it's identified that 2 of my virtual machines would benefit from host-based read caching. Specifically, I've got this VM called Ashley, this other VM called Clinch. I can see specifically which virtual hard disk, it would benefit. I can see the read ratio for the I/O right now, what the predicted cache hit would be. I can see the current IOPS and what the IOPS we're predicting would improve by enabling the cache. Same goes for latency. The current latency on that disk, and then the predicted latency improvement. And then finally, this is probably the most important piece here, is how much cache should you allocate and what the recommended cache block size would be. So again, this chart might change over time because maybe next week you add some more VMs and you deploy some new applications, generates a new workload, and this is living recommendations here. So it's not static because workloads change over time. So you might see new virtual machines pop in over time, and then might go ahead and enable some host-based caching for that. We also can take a look at basically resource waste. So here I can look at both idle VMs and VM snapshots. So here are idle or stopped virtual machines. You can see how many virtual CPUs, how much memory they're allocated, and you can see utilizations that are associated with that. And also for snapshots, I can go in here and I can see the snapshot, which VM it's associated with, the size of it, the age, the data store it's in, and how full that particular data store is, and also how many siblings that particular snapshot is. So if you have a lot of nested snapshots, you can see a lot of siblings here, and that's another way that you can improve your I/O performance, because if you have lots and lots of snapshots, they have to be traversed in order to get at some of this data here. So this, by cleaning up unnecessary snapshots that are older or things like that, it can have some other other benefits as well. So this is the SIOS IQ product as it exists here today. I do want to give everybody a sneak peek of what so recently we were at VMworld in San Francisco, probably about a few weeks ago, and actually VMworld in Europe, in Barcelona, was just happening this week, and we're demoing some exciting new technologies here, specifically our topological graph here, where not only can we show you those issues in that table form that I showed you in just a moment ago, but now here's a visual way that you can look at this. So let me go over here and we'll take a look at this. So this is pretty exciting, because I'm taking a look right now at my entire environment, so I can see all the different objects, how they're related to one another. Again, this is all touch enabled, so I can pinch and zoom and drag if you've got a touch enabled device here. But right off the bat, I can see here highlighted in red, here's my issue. Let me zoom in and we can take a look. So here's the issue. I can see all these red objects are related. I've got a data store, I've got a virtual machine, and some of these are blinking. And the ones that are blinking, these are actually the root cause objects. So if I click on this, I can drill down and get more information. But this is a great way just to get a bird's eye view of the entire infrastructure, and very easily zoom in and pinpoint where issues are taking place. So again, I can go in here, and this is a similar issue. I've got an application storage contention issue. It's a couple different VMs. The two VMs are root objects, or root cause objects here. Again, I can see symptoms. We've got this expectancy line. So this dotted line is what we'll refer to as the learned behavior line, or the expectancy line. So this is based on the analysis and based on the patterns we've been observing in your environment. This is what we were expecting to see. Well, you'll notice here in this pink area, the values for latency went well above this expectancy line. So that's kind of just showing you what we were expecting to see versus what was actually observed, and that's why we considered this to be an anomaly here, and we raised the issue. You can also look at the impact analysis, again, either visually here. Here I can see kind of a subset of the graph as opposed to the bigger one. I can also go back to the classic view and look at this as a table. And here I can understand that, well, okay, those two virtual machines not only is impacting my data store, but it's impacting negatively these 4 other virtual machines as well. So again, going back to earlier in the presentation, it's important to not just look at individual metrics on individual objects, but how all of these objects are related as a whole, and how they interact with one another. Because here 2 VMs are bogging down, if you will, 4 others in the environment. So this tells you exactly what the scope of this particular issue is here. And again, all I had to do was basically either click a box in the table, or click an icon on the top, the topology map, and it brings me right to the meat of all the details here. So at that point, that kind of concludes the demo piece here. I guess I'll switch back, and if you want to learn more about SIOS IQ, I guess at this point we'll open up for Q&A. Again, if you want to try it in your environment, you can go and get an evaluation copy of the software. Go to us.sios.com. You can email us at info@us.sios.com. Find us on Twitter, or even give us a call. We're happy to have further discussions, to provide demos if you have other folks in your team that might be interested in learning more. And then certainly if if you want to go ahead and deploy it in your environment, it's non-intrusive. Again, it's a virtual appliance. You drop it right in, point at your virtual centers. It's not going to make changes or start doing anything to your virtual infrastructure. It's going to start observing. It's going to start learning. It's going to use that machine learning backend to then do a behavior analysis and figure out what normal versus anomalous behavior is. So, Doug, any other questions? I guess we'll open it up for Q&A at this point here.
You bet. Do you guys still have a free version?
Yeah, there is. Yep.
Okay, cool. I thought that you guys had a free version that you could. So, guys, you can, well, the 30-day trial is what you want because it'll be fully loaded, but free version's really neat too. So definitely download this thing and play around with it. But we do have a few questions, so let me get to these. One, and this might go along with another question, but any support for Citrix infrastructure? And I guess the question is, a bigger question is, what do you mean by Citrix infrastructure? Like Zen servers, Zen apps, Zen desktop? Maybe you can follow up.
Yeah, so today, this is a VMware specific solution here. Okay. So it's a VMware virtual appliance. It pulls from from Virtual Center, from ESX hosts. We are looking to broaden the scope of the product over time to look at potentially other hypervisors or even cloud infrastructures, things like that. But for the time being, this is VMware only.
Perfect. But if your Zen apps, Zen desktops running on top of VMware, which gosh, something like 80% of it is, then you'll get all the benefits of it.
Yeah. So again, a VMware infrastructure. Again, you can run any type of virtual machine on top of that, and get insight as to what's going on in the virtualization area here. Yep.
Perfect. What are the connectivity requirements? Does that make sense?
Sure. So basically, when you configure SIOS IQ, first it's going to need to connect to your virtual center. So that just uses standard like port 443. So nothing too special there. If you're interested in the host-based caching feature, we do require SIOS IQ will need to connect into your ESX hosts. So you have to turn on the SSH access to the hosts, and the SIOS IQ virtual appliance will SSH into the ESX host and for example, pull vSCSI stats. So HTTPS to virtual center, SSH to your host, and then if you, as far as the application level intelligence, in the current version of the product, we can collect SQL Server metrics, and we do that via WMI, so you would provide some Windows credentials as well. But that's it. Also then, I mentioned before that the product can update itself. So if you want the self-updating features or the auto-update features enabled, the SIOS IQ virtual machine would just need a connection to the internet, so it can pull like HTTPS down. If you don't want that, that's okay too. We do also have a way where you can just manually download the update file and load it in through your browser. So connection to the outside world is optional; it's not required. And also, one more thing I do want to point out is no data gets sent up. All this data sits safely within your environment inside this virtual appliance. No data is getting sent to the outside world.
Perfect. Any other questions, guys? I lost my questions piece. There we go. Is the product localized? Support for different languages?
Yeah, actually, yeah, we do have that built into the product. We'll have to take offline to see what it's been localized in, but it's definitely know that the infrastructure is there in the technology. Perfect.
And nowadays most things are localized, or at least built in, and then they add on from there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okie dokie. Futures? Anything you can talk about what's coming out in the future?
I don't have any kind of roadmap slides here today, but again, because we're releasing new features on a regular basis, every 6 to 8 weeks or so, you keep SIOS IQ active and running. You get all the latest and greatest features. If anybody's interested in more specifics, we could always set up a follow-up call, get up one of our product managers on the line and kind of talk about roadmap and where this is all going. But definitely going to be adding lots and lots of new features over time, and it's just going to get better and better.
Perfect, perfect. Tony, I think that's all the questions we have today. If there's any more questions, please ask real quick because I'm going to close this thing off. So I usually always follow up by if you want to learn more, what do you need to do? Well, just look at the screen right there. So to learn more, visit SIOS or us.sios.com. Download the product. There is a free version, so but the 30-day trial is the fully loaded thing, and everything you saw today, you get, and it's amazing. So it learns. This is what I call the future: machine learning, big data. So